I'm really grateful to be here with you and be on this journey with sharing your story, which is something that I know is really important to you right now, especially with the transition of previously known as the Rising Woman to expanding to an even like bigger energy, which is worthy and united. And it's such an honor to be here and be able to share with everyone the truth of your story. And just hearing from you of late, really feeling so immersive and passionate about sharing your story, which I know hasn't been the easiest journey for you to actually accept. May I ask you why you feel called to now, like really sharing your journey with your audience and your friends?
Yeah. Thank you, Jax. Thank you for being here. And firstly, thank you for holding the space. It's been months, 8 months I've been looking for the one. And you are the one. So thank you. I feel like I've shared parts of the story in little snippets of the growing of what the Rising Woman was, but not to its full depths, because to be honest, I don't think that I truly understood myself or understood my purpose or understood who I was evolving into. So although I knew I had so many parts to the story, and I say like my life is like a story, there's so many different chapters, I didn't quite have like a clear understanding of it. And I didn't quite understand how my story led me to where I am today. So I wasn't able to share it because I didn't have the hindsight yet. I didn't have the wisdom yet. I didn't quite understand myself enough to be able to really expose everything and its lessons. And I think it's just been a walking journey. Yeah.
And so from this place, with you going, okay, I really want to share, who do you feel really needs to hear it the most?
Oh, that's a big one. Oh my gosh. Everyone. I think, originally the Rising Woman started as just women. And everyone was like, what about the men? I'm like, yeah, the men too. Absolutely. But I feel like everyone needs to hear it. I feel like people need to hear the story of the person that started this.
Yeah.
Like for me, it was this movement, and I call it a movement, it was always bigger than me. It was always so much bigger than me. It wasn't for like my own thing. It was for everyone, because I wanted other people to experience the healing that I had experienced in my life. So I want to be able to share my story and people to hear that the person who started this has had their own story, has gone through it, and has gone through the adversity and gone through the hardships, but didn't just go through it. I did the work. I did the work necessary. And at the end of that, I've also found myself in it. And I feel like that it's beautiful work that we can do. And I want to be able to share that with other people so that the person that's behind this is relatable to others.
So why though? Why do you care?
Why do I care?
So many people, everyone's journeying something, right?
Absolutely.
But there is a part of you that really feels compelled.
Yeah.
You continue to want to share your story for others to learn. But why? Why do you care so much?
Oh, that's a big one. Why do I care so much? I care because if it wasn't for my mother changing herself, then I would have never changed. Like, this isn't just an impact on my generation. This is like generational changes. This is generational changes. And I truly do believe that storytelling has power. It holds power. When you ask someone, hey, what's your story? You know, for when someone first asked me that, like sat me down, was like, what's your story? Like, tell me who you are. I was like, me? What do you mean? And I think for the first time when people had asked me that, I felt for the first time seen, I felt heard. And I felt like that I could speak my truth without shame, without judgment, without criticism. And I would still be loved by the right people that could hold that space for me. And experiencing that in my own life, I felt like that I could break free from the things that I was so ashamed of my entire life until I was 25. So having walked this and seeing the changes, not just in my mum, not just she made the changes first within herself, and then through her changes, she passed that on to us. And to see the work that I'm doing, and I've amplified that, what she's been able to do for me, and amplifying that, I know generationally it will make changes. It's shifting paradigms, or shifting everything. And I know my children are going to have a different perception, different beliefs in life, different, feelings and emotions because of the work that we get to do today.
Nice.
So for me, it's so much bigger than me, because this is generational work. This is like changing family lineages and curses.
What I'm hearing is that you're a stand for liberation, and that you desire for others to really feel the liberation that you're feeling through the choices of your mother, and even just having the opportunity to share your story. So now I know that our audience is like, okay, now Jess, let's get gritty. Right?
Let's do it.
Like you spoke of adversity.
Yeah.
You speak of trauma. So let's give the audience what they want.
Absolutely.
Let's get gritty. What is something that you've held in your heart for quite some time that you feel ready to share?
Yeah. Ooh.
Tears are welcome.
I know. I'm like, when people ask me this question, it's like my mind shows me like a million different visions of my life. And I'm like, which one should we lead with today? And
which one are you ashamed of the most, or have held shame for the most?
That's a good question.
That's the one that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Growing up, we grew up in Western Sydney, in areas, Blacktown, Mount Druitt, areas that are known for poverty, low income earning homes. And my dad is an immigrant, and I'm first generation Australian, and my grandparents and his brothers moved to Australia. So when they moved to Australia, they moved to an area called Bidwell. And Bidwell, for those of you that may not know Western Sydney very well, it has 12, or maybe this year, maybe 13 generations of poverty. And it's Housing Commission. And if you go and actually Google, they actually created a funny show about that area, which I actually don't think is so funny, called Housos.
Right.
And they actually made it a joke about the poverty in that area. And, instead of empowering a community to want to change, we just make a show out of it. And unfortunately, that's also where my father grew up. And, my mother is also from Western Sydney. So growing up in that area, the schooling wasn't the best. Like, my parents, I love them to bits, but we grew up in low income earning homes. The max amount I think that they would have been earning is maybe like $40,000 a year, maybe 45, maybe 50. My mum was a stay-at-home mum her whole life. And being, my dad dropped out of school, they didn't have an education. And unfortunately, I was raised in a home where I was exposed to drug abuse, and I was exposed to bikies.
Yep.
And that's what I grew up around. And I know that there's going to be some people listening to this that I've grown up with, and that's okay. And that's also why I stopped doing the podcast, because people had heard me talking about this. And it actually brought up a lot of things for kids that I grew up with, because I'm the first person to talk about it publicly. And, you know, being exposed to that, I consider myself quite lucky, to be honest. My parents were amazing. We didn't see, you know, things that you see on movies where you're seeing, like, you know, my parents weren't injecting drugs or anything like that. They were not doing anything like that. So I feel like we had quite a humble upbringing around it, thank God. And there was no domestic violence or anything like that, but we were exposed to that life. And, you know, growing up, your parents tell you, like, drugs are bad, you can't take drugs, don't do this, don't do that, but you see it. And as kids, we're sponges and we absorb everything and we see it. Unfortunately, my dad made a lot of not the best decisions in life, and, you know, there was always no money, but there was always money for drugs. I remember my childhood, you know, seeing my mum depressed all the time, just sleeping, angry, my dad angry, frustrated. And I just remember, you know, going to school and feeling like I wasn't smart enough, I wasn't worthy enough. You know, you see all the other kids that are more fortunate and they're wearing brand clothes, Billabong.
Billabong.
Billabong, you know, now it's like Louis Vuitton. You know, and gosh, soon there's going to be kindergartens wearing Louis Vuitton. But, and I just remember, like, just feeling out of place. Like, for me, I felt out of place. I felt like if you didn't have money, then what were you going to do with your life? You know, I was like, I used to just, I had friends that, you know, would have everything, mobile phones, the best clothes, like their parents would give them money and everything. And that wasn't something that my parents could do. And, you know, that wasn't their fault. It's not their fault. But growing up, you start to have these beliefs like you're not worthy or you aren't good enough, or I couldn't see what my life was going to be. And by the time when I turned 13, my parents separated. And, you know, my dad unfortunately left my mother with 2 kids and no career and bankrupt. And it was unfortunate, like, what we went through. And my whole life, like, I've always held so much anger for my father my whole life. And, you know, here I am, a young girl at 13, and, you know, then was my first encounter of being sexually abused at 13. And I didn't know what was happening, but I definitely knew that, you know, that shaped my entire adolescence of drug abuse, alcohol abuse, multiple sexual encounters, and coming back to, like, you grow up in this environment and you know that you're not supposed to do these things, but when you're holding so much pain and anger, the only thing to do to get rid of the pain and the anger and the sadness that you feel is to suppress it with something. And unfortunately, that was drugs, alcohol, and my misunderstanding of sex. And I can confidently say, like, my whole adolescence, like, I honestly didn't see any form of a future for me. Like, all I seen for my life was Centrelink and Subway. I did not see anything for my future. I was a high school dropout. I didn't understand what they were teaching me. I could not get it. I felt I couldn't read properly. Like, my sister has taught me how to read and write. Like, I couldn't speak properly, like, nothing. So my whole adolescence, I was like, who am I? And I was so ashamed of everything of my life. I was so ashamed. Like, I just didn't understand.
Do you feel that
just hearing your story with, you know, your parents,
Mm-hmm.
you know, being into the use of drugs and
Yeah.
you know, the way that you described at home and then being at school,
Mm-hmm.
the comparison
Mm-hmm.
syndrome really like impacted you as a girl, as a child, and therefore, you know, leading into your adolescence where it had really caused you to experience these scenarios and not being able to read and being a dropout. Do you feel that that the comparison is what really hurt you the most? Do you feel like that's the part where you kind of you know, with the money, the different things, and it kind of like really suppressed parts of you?
Absolutely. I think you know, you just always just question yourself, like, you know, do people not like me because I don't get to wear labels? Do people not like me because I don't have X, Y, and Z, you know? And you do put like these labels on yourself unknowingly as a kid. You know, and this started in primary school, and you see the difference between a family that has money or a family that's well off, and then there's my family where we're scraping coins to pay for food. You know, and there is, you know, that comparison of like, and it's not even a comparison, it's a misunderstanding. It's a misunderstanding because you're young. Like, I only understood all this at the age of 25.
Did you feel embarrassed?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, you know, absolutely. It was like, you have no answers. You can't, and whatever's happening in the home, you're not allowed to talk about it. Don't tell the kids what we're doing. Like, and it was hush hush. So you're raised around these secrets, and then you become a teenager and you're exposed to these things, and you know no better. Like, you do know better, but you don't see, well, I don't know, I'm not going to university. What else do I kind of do? And it's almost like, you know, you're actually put in alignment with certain types of people because of what you were raised into. So it's like I went to high school, and it's like all of the kids that had no money hung out together. They all wagged schools together. They all smoked weed together. We all took drugs together. We weren't hanging out with the kids going to uni and finishing school. Why? Because we all felt misunderstood. We're all angry. We're all in school fights. We're all, you know, horrible to each other. We're all sad. We're all like, we're just like, it's just this circle of trauma. Like, looking back, and I think I had a conversation with Mum about this recently. I think all of my friends' parents were divorced. And you just end up in these, like, magnetized to these people, these kids. We're not even people, we're literally children. Even at 13, we're children. I thought I was an adult.
I always do. I still think I'm an adult.
Oh my God. One day when I grow up. And yeah, you just, it's like you just get pulled into like those circles, and you just don't understand. You don't understand.
So, you know, you have audience listening right now who see where you are and what you've created, and your, you know, your brand and your fire and your relentlessness. Let's talk about the time you mentioned it before, when you were sexually abused, and then you also talk about drug use, and let's give the audience an idea of what that version of you was like, so they can too feel at any stage where they're at right now that there's always hope.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Because I know, like, we know that right now there's some listening that could be really in rock bottom moments. So what was that like for you? And like, what's the story?
You know, the night that it happened was the first night that I did the whole, I'm going to Mum's house not going to mom's house, I'm going to my friend's house story. And, you know, and that's what this girl that I met, she told me to do that. Like, tell your mom that you're going to my house. I'll tell her that I'm going to your house. And, you know, we're going to get picked up by this guy. And I was like, okay, cool. You know, and back then, like, I knew no different. And it's no one's fault. And I did that because I was desperate for friends. It was a new high school. My parents had just separated and I needed to make friends. I was like, I have no friends, literally. I'm like, I need to make a friend. So I did that. And, you know, I don't remember how old he was. I'm pretty sure he was 18, 19. He was definitely older. And, you know, that night, you know, he had offered me alcohol. I said no. He offered her alcohol. She said yes. She was already drinking at the age of 13. I was just on the cusp of turning 14. And, you know, that night she passed out and I had no idea where I was. I was only new to the Gold Coast, had no idea anywhere. I had no idea where I was driven to, like nothing. I didn't even have a mobile then, I don't think. Yeah. I'm not sure. I can't even remember if I had a mobile, to be honest. Yeah. And, you know, that's kind of when it happened. And it wasn't, you know, thank God it wasn't.
How are you feeling at this stage? You don't know where you are.
I, you know, thank God it wasn't a forceful, full-on, like, traumatic. It was traumatic, but it wasn't very harmful. You know what I'm like, you know what I mean? Like, I don't want to try and paint a picture, but, you know, but it was still forceful. Like, I'm stuck in this room. Yeah. And I was like, shit, like, what do I do? Like, you know, my friend is literally, I was because I had no idea where I was. My friend is literally passed out. I've never drank alcohol in my life. I didn't have anything. And I'm just like, what do I do? And I'm stuck in this bed with this random person I have never met. Yeah. You know, and unfortunately, as I'm saying this, you know, I feel like because there was so many secrets in my life, it was almost like I couldn't use my voice to say, like, I want to go, take me home. Like, it's like I didn't have a voice to say, like, and I'm 13. Like, what the hell do I know? I'm like, what is going on?
You're still a baby.
I'm still a child. I'm like, what is going on? I don't even think I could comprehend what was happening. And then, he wanted to have sex. And I was like, no, like, I'm a virgin. Yeah. And he just kept pushing and pushing and pushing and pushing and, like, taking my clothes off and pushing. And I kept saying, no. And then something clicked in me. And I remember clearly thinking, like, if you don't say yes, it's going to happen anyways. And you can either say no and it's going to be forced, or you can say yes and agree and it might make you feel better. Yeah. And that I clearly remember thinking that. Yeah. And then that was when he had said, like, I love you, and this is what, like, something like, I love you, and this is what we should do. And because my parents never said that they love us, and there wasn't love in the home, I associated, and I didn't realize this till I was 25, like, oh, mind blown. I actually associated sex with love. Yeah. And that if you want to be loved, then you should have sex. Yeah. Because there just wasn't something in our house. And it was probably the most painful experience. And I was so ashamed, I was so ashamed going to school, because I remember my friend waking up in the morning going, like, what happened? And I didn't say anything. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, you know what? What do I say? Like, like, that held so much shame going to school. I was so scared.
That's a hard secret to hold. Like,
well, I was so scared. Like, what, like, all these other girls knew him, like, this guy. Like my friend, apparently some other girl that was in this little circle was like dating him. And she's 13 too. And, you know, I was just so, from there, that's when I spiraled literally out of control.
Yeah.
I just, you know, I started hanging out with the wrong people. Like, mind you, we're all bloody kids. And we're all hanging out with 18, 19, 20-year-olds, you know. And then drugs start coming in. It's like, here, take this. You know, and it's crazy. Like the first time that I was at a party and I started drinking, I was drinking passion pop, like bottles and bottles. And I would drink to the point where I would be just lost. Like I'd be angry, aggressive, crying for hours, crying and crying and crying, and just drinking and drinking and drinking and drinking. And, you know, I remember the night when the drugs were offered to me for the first time, and it almost felt like it was the same thing. We better take it, because you either say yes or it's going to go against you.
Yeah.
And I felt like that was my power. If I said yes, then I could be in control. But then that just opened up pathways of everything.
Yeah. And that's so twice that you've really, I guess this is the street smart in you.
Yeah, the street
right?
smart. Yeah,
It's
I got
just
that.
like,
I definitely got that.
Say yes.
Yeah.
You know, my power's going to be taken away, which it's not unusual. Like this is so common. So I'm so glad that we're speaking about this, because I can only imagine how many women can resonate and men.
Yeah, absolutely.
To this story right now. So when you started the Rising Woman, is this what was in the cup in the closet? Like, is this the stuff? Like, what was it that has you, the difference between you starting the Rising Woman and then the version of you now that's like, here's my story. What was it then that was stopping you from really bringing the Rising Woman forward?
So, oddly enough, when I didn't actually have these really big revelations until the second event that I had done. So I still had no understanding. When I started the Rising Woman, it was so wild. Like I had become a Christian, and that's where my healing journey actually really started for myself. And it was the people in the church asking me, what's your story? And I was like, okay. And that kind of started happening, and I started sharing my story, and I started speaking to people, and I slowly felt like this like release, like very subtly. And I felt like I was at home. And then I remember like I started serving, like I was going to church like 3 times a day. I was just looking for, I felt like I had hit rock bottom within myself. And then I was standing there one day, and I remember like the pastor, she was just saying like, we have to make everyone feel welcome. Everyone has a story. And I was like, wow, everyone does have a story. And look at where I am now. So that's when I was like, I want to do this outside of here. Like, I want to actually be able to create a space for women to share their stories, because I was an influencer for so long. And it's almost like I was this influencer with this bodybuilding status. I became a nurse. It's like I became this high achiever. And it's like, if I could be really great, it would cover my past. And no one will have to know about it. So I felt kind of like a bit, not a fraud, but I felt like there was like these two identities of people. And I knew that so many women that I had been friends with that also had social media statuses were hiding things. We were all going through this thing, but then we're putting up these beautiful images of our beautiful body and all the things that we're achieving and all these things, but then we're suffering behind the scenes, feeling misunderstood. And I was the same. And I was like, I want to start a movement where, through the power of storytelling, and I already knew that I had a story. I didn't know the depth of it at that time. So that's when I started The Rising Woman. It was just through wanting to interview women. It was a podcast on body image, social issues, depression, anxiety. Mind you, I'm in the pits.
Yeah.
Of my depression and anxiety.
Yeah. Is that from the series and sequence of years of drugs
Yeah.
and not knowing yourself and feeling
Absolutely.
like you're hiding and you're showing up, but there's no substance? And
Absolutely.
Yeah,
I
this
just
is
felt
such a common thread.
Yeah. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
I was 25 and I honestly feel like I had a quarter life crisis. I left
Yeah.
my nursing career. My father was chronically ill. I lost my grandfather at the same time. And I just felt like years of suppressing my emotions. It's like the moment that I started letting people in, it was like a crack to my outer layer of protection, because I put up a shield around myself and control. And then as I started like letting things in, it's like everything was just unraveling. And I didn't know what I was creating. I literally remember writing this business plan. I'm like, I just want to share stories of mental health and awareness and everything, because I'm like, you know what? Like, I hope that women behind me, I hope that kids behind me don't have to feel the way that I felt, because I did become a nurse. I did do bodybuilding competitions. I did do a lot of amazing things, regardless of where I grew up and where I came from and all of the drug abuse and all of the bad things that I did. I actually had the power to change my life. And I was like, I want other women to feel that and know that there is possibilities for them. And that's kind of just where it started. And I just started messaging so many. I think I messaged like 100 women on Instagram. I'm like sending them this big script of like what the Rising Woman was. I'm like, do you want to come on my podcast? So many people ignored me, but the people that were like, yes, I would love to. And you know, then the conversations were around like domestic violence, sexual abuse, like women literally sharing their story that no one has heard, like not even their parents. No one has heard anything. And like that's where it started. And I think hearing these women's stories and hearing other women speak, I started connecting dots in my life. And I'm curious. I'm a curious person. I'm very self-aware. I started asking myself questions about that moment, about the moments. And then for my second event, that's when I had realized, and I was speaking at that event, and I was like, holy moly. It's like it hit me. I'm like, I have actually been taken advantage of, and I didn't even know. I had no idea. And it's like everything in my adolescence and my childhood, everything made sense when I was like 25, I think, or just turning, I think I was 26 maybe by that point, or something or other, 26, 27, I don't know. I feel like, I don't even know. And it's like everything made sense. It was just this spiral of things and things. And I was like, holy hell. And I didn't know what to do with it. Like I shared my story at my second event. And I was like, oh my gosh, like I'm just, you know, I feel like it's because we push it to the side. We're so ashamed and we push it down. We make it feel like it's nothing. Don't say anything. Keep yourself quiet. Don't tell anyone. Don't say anything. This is normal. And we tell ourselves these like positive things, but then it comes out. And I didn't even know what to do with it. Like, and that was midway, like through, I think I started at end of 2018. And then the second event was September 2019. And then that's when it hit me. So I honestly, when I first started this, like I had no idea what I was doing. I had no idea where it was going to lead to, let alone my own healing journey. It was just an idea.
What I'm hearing is the difference between the Rising Woman and now, and where you're taking this is, you mentioned before that you really desire for other women to know that they can have or they can experience life similarly or whatever you experience and still do what, you know, they want to do. Like you did nursing, influence, you bodybuilding, all that. But therefore then you really felt the emptiness. There was it was kind of, you did it, you're ticking these boxes, but there was an emptiness there. Yeah. And so it was your second event where you were like, whoa, which therefore opened this whole other realm of realizations for you. Yeah. And you had to step away. The healing cannot be done. Yeah. There's a whole other version of us that needs to be crafted, which you went and did. Yeah. Yeah. Which we'll talk about in a second. And now you're back. And what I'm hearing is that you're saying that you can have this, you can be this, and you can love it. You can actually love yourself. Yeah. You can feel fulfilled. Yeah. So it's absolutely. Like you got halfway, and now you've like put two versions of you together that is like, yes, I want that, and I also get to love myself and appreciate my journey. So can you share about your healing journey? Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah, from that second event, I did go on to do one more, and I still continued the podcast interviews. I think that really, like, I was like, whoa, like this really has impact. Like women were coming to this event and people were talking about it. Like social media was going wild. And I was like, okay, all right, let's go. Let's keep going. Next one. And then we did one for Lululemon's in Women's International Day, right? Like 3 days before like the whole country locked down. And I kept the podcast going until October 2020. And that's when I had a huge breakdown and was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder. And that was the last interview that I posted and the last post that I put on the Instagram account, and I disappeared from it. The success of my business triggered post-traumatic stress disorder, and it sent me spiraling emotionally out of control. And that's when and the last podcast interview we did was between me, Mum, and Monique. And I interviewed my mum, and it was very emotional, and I put it on social media. And the kids that I grew up with heard it and watched it. And there was a lot of things that were said, and there was a lot of emotions that were brought up for them, and they were contacting me saying things, not bad things, but it just put a lot of things in perspective. And that was the last time I did it. And I had realized, like, if I really want to lead something like this, I had to go to the depths of myself first, because I can't keep I couldn't keep having these big conversations and not know how to answer people, because I was not good within myself. Like, I needed to work on myself. Like, I couldn't even manage my emotions, let alone or understand and put together all of the pieces of my entire life, let alone speak about my family, speak about things that have never been spoken about. Like, we come from houses where you say nothing. It doesn't matter what you see, doesn't matter what you hear. When you walk out that door, you say nothing to no one. And to air something like that out, I was like, I need to step into this. I need to be stronger. I need to be resilient. I need to have the knowledge. I need to get my wisdom. I need to really understand my trauma, really understand how my paradigm works, how my mind works, how my emotions work, how my energy works. Like, I need to understand me. And I was curious. So I literally went and did timeline therapy. I come across, actually Monique came across this mindset coach. And I was like, hey, I think I need to do some work on myself. And that's where it started. I did timeline therapy, and I did a lot of trauma healing. And it hasn't stopped since then. Like, I have been constantly like learning and understanding, and like working on my post-traumatic stress disorder and everything, and unraveling my life in bits and pieces and finding the lessons, the hindsight. How does this work? How has it affected our whole family line? Where has it come from? Why do I react this way? Why do I believe these certain things about myself? Why do I have these perceptions? Why do I have these worldviews? And it's taken me a long time. Like, that was 2020. It is now September, almost a year. 2 years. 2 years, 2022, of going through all of this, like working on myself, but also working with my clients to also
understand them and their behaviors and their patterns and all these things. It's like, it's like you work with your clients to work on yourself and all this stuff. And I had to get to a place where I felt ready to lead this in integrity, with wisdom, being able to emotionally be able to hold myself through this and be able to say, like, I didn't just go and do the work, like I integrated it, I've embodied it, I've done it, so I could hold something like this from a very pure place. Because not to say that it wasn't pure before, the intention was pure. Was I ready? No. And I think a lot of those women, the women that were a part of it, I think they looked up to me and everything, and that was beautiful and it was an amazing experience. But I think if it had have kept growing and I had have let it keep growing, I think the Rising Woman would have burned to the ground along with me. And things would have been said maybe that maybe shouldn't be said, or things wouldn't come out the way that they should come out, because on these subjects, you do have to be careful what you say, how you say it, the things that you say. If you're uneducated around trauma, you know, mindset work, energy work, all that stuff, if you are uneducated about it, you know, there are people receiving this on the other side. There's other people involved, not just me. So I had to get to a place within myself where I could say I can actually lead this in big integrity and leadership. And then a new name was born. Which is Worthy and United. I don't, like, everyone was saying, like, you're the Rising Woman, and I love the Rising Woman, but I also feel like it's bigger than me, and it's also for women. We can do this work, but it also includes men. It's not just women. It is men need to do this work too. Men need to understand, like, if you want to support your woman, or women want to support their man, like, it's unity, it's collective, like, it's like we're all on this planet doing this work. Like, the paradigms don't get changed from just a woman. Paradigms get changed from men as well. And if there's anything that I've learned from healing my relationship with my father, it's not just women. And that's why, like, Worthy and United is for both.
For all.
For all.
Worthy and United feels like you're here from an embodied place.
Absolutely. Yeah.
So Worthy and United embodied, what does your audience have to look forward to?
Oh my gosh. You know, I think something that really lands for me is, like, you were born worthy and nothing has ever changed. And that's what the slogan will be. Before, it was for the Rising Woman, you know, strength and resilience is the new beautiful. But I don't want people to just be resilient, because you can be resilient and still suffer and feel broken. And I've had that. And you can be resilient but also thrive. Whereas what I really want to come with is, like, you are born worthy and nothing has changed. It's our experiences and our encounters and our circumstances in life that change our perception of what we feel like we are worthy of and to have, because we can have, be, and do anything in this lifetime, no matter where you're from, no matter what area you grew up in, no matter how much money was in the home. They're all just experiences. But when we're born into this life, we are born in our purest form. Like, we are innocent. We are completely innocent. We are a beautiful, free spirit and soul. But it's the circumstances that change and mold our perception. So when I think of worthiness, we are all worthy. And that's the message that I truly want to get across and help people see this. Because if I could do it, and I can see this, and it's constant work. It's not like overnight magic. But I think that a lot more people can see it. We just have to understand what we've been through. And then united, it is empowering. You know, we stand united, we stand together. And I think everyone that will be a part of Worthy and United, including yourself, and being a part of this podcast, being here and everything, like, we stand united to be able to deliver this message. We stand together. And it's our stories and it's our impact and it's our wisdom and our knowledge that gets to share this for someone that may be an old version of us. And that's where it starts.
Yeah.
And that's the work. And I think that's where, you know, we stand together, we do this work together, and together we change generations.
Worthy and united.
We need a sign. We need like a sign.
That was the last question.
Amazing.
How do you feel?
I feel good. Whew.
Do you want me to ask any more questions?
No, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
I think that
You did amazing.
that is just that.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Perfect.
I'm sweating. I've got sweat coming down everywhere.